There's a movie I like with Weird Al Yankovic called UHF, and it's got this show where you can win prizes like fish. You win fish. It's a really funny movie. Go check it out. And in it, this person is like, "Do you want this 10,000? You want this really nice car, or do you want what's in the box?" And she says, "I want what's in the box." And then he says, "You get," and there's nothing in there. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. That's what Nuggets fans got at the trade deadline. Absolutely nothing. Ryan is sad. Swipa is mad. And Matt, he's just glad to be here. We'll talk about it on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day, Monday through Friday, especially on this, a Thursday trade deadline special triple threat edition. Glad to have you guys with us, regardless of what may or may not have happened for the Nuggets at the deadline. We will continue to cover all of it in detail for you here at Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for being an everydayer and finding us wherever you get podcasts or videos. If you're a fan of youtube.com/Locked On Nuggets, where I'm sure we're going to reach like 9K this week. We're going to do it.
Hell yeah.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. Did you hear that, Swipa? Super Bowl this weekend.
Nobody actually cares at this point,
And there's
because
no
the
better
NBA
way
has,
to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. You're all going to watch anyway. My name is Matt Moore. I'm a senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm joined by Ryan Blackburn. He just got off of a live show over at Pickaxe and Roll. So thanks to him for doing a double dip here and doing Locked On Nuggets with us. Also joined by Swipa. You can catch him after every Nuggets game on his channel at Swipa Cam. He's on Player's Choice. He is on. You have a new show? Yes? No? No, you do not have a new show. That's another thing for your other job that you share with me. So the Nuggets did nothing at the deadline. Nothing. No trades were made. I kept checking in. Was like, hey, anything? Yesterday was their chance. They were talking to several teams. They had some things cooking, but couldn't beat out the other offers based off of what they were willing to give in terms of pick swaps and everything. And in some ways, hey, nobody wanted their pick swaps because they still think the Nuggets are going to be pretty good because they have Nikola Jokic. That's the upside. Nobody wanted your picks because they think you're still going to be pretty good. So your picks aren't as valuable. I don't blame anybody for being upset because I do think if you watch the season, the biggest problem is I'll say this and then I'll hand it over to Swipa first. They won the title. They got worse by losing Bruce Brown. They were set to repeat. They looked like they were going to repeat. They came up short. They got worse again by losing KCP. And they have not made a move to reverse that. They are banking so much on internal improvement. And if Peyton had become a 3-level scorer and a real weapon off the bench, if we were talking about him for 6-man, this would be different. If Julian Strother looked like he was a lighted up, even if he was just Jordan Clarkson, you would be like, all right, okay, that's something. If Zeke Naji had become playable, then this would be a different conversation. But none of those things have happened. And so now here we are. Ryan, do you want to go first, or I think we should let Swipa do?
Yeah, no, let's let Swipa go off because I've got some other things. I need to take a break after that live show, so I'm just kidding. Let's get into it with Cam. Swipa, what are you looking sad and frustrated over there?
Nope, no sad. Nope. I'm not even frustrated. I think that the level that I'm at currently is, I think there have been jobs that have been done that were not done correctly. And I think a lot of this is we have had conversations about how do we build a team? What does the process look like? What are the things that are needed on the roster? The kind of players you need on the roster, from defenders to just playmakers to length, all those things. And I think there were decisions that have been made. We don't have to rehash them over the last 2 years about contracts and asset management, player options. And what's happened is there's been a convolution of different decisions that were made that have led up to this trade deadline. And this trade deadline, I think the biggest thing is that we've had so many different opportunities to evaluate what is on this roster. And I think around the league, what you need in order to win. I think we've watched this team now for last year, saw the defects, saw the downsides. the adds to the team were Russell Westbrook and Dario Saric. Dario Saric, again, is the 6th highest paid player on the team. Zeke Naji became the 5th highest paid player on the team. And so you wanted to fill these holes, and then you come into the year, they're worse defensively than they have been since the 2021-22 year. But even then, they were 15th in defense. So they're back on pace with what they were doing in the 1920 season prior to the 2021 season, really right after the bubble when they were completely exhausted. I mean, their adjusted defense I shared, earlier, they're 19th in adjusted defense. There's so many things they're missing, screen navigators, everything KCP did, just to be short. And so I think what I'm looking at now is that, Booth, he understood what his role was. Just like I understand what my role is. You understand what your role is that we're here to be storytellers. We're here to tell the story of the Denver Nuggets, both from our vantage point, with information we've collected for the sake of the audience. Like, I am to be an interpreter of events to people, that's what storytelling is. Booth knows that his job, and what he said to us the day he got the job, is that he's a steward of the Jokic era, and that if there are needs that must be addressed with the roster, then they have to be addressed. And I think my biggest criticism is, and I think where we've gotten here at this point, is I think everybody can watch this team and know that there are certain things that they just need to add. They need improvement at certain levels. And we know that he tried. Reportedly Chris Boucher, reportedly Jonas Valanciunas, then reportedly Terrence Mann were the names that were most mentioned. But I think that's where we get back to the onus is, the reason they weren't able to, I think, collect a lot of those assets is because they had sent out their own assets. What the 3 second-round picks for Deron Holmes, which again is not his fault, that's an Achilles tear. The 3 second-round picks for Reggie Jackson, what they got back in certain deals they sent out, even from Bones Highland, I believe, the 2 second-round picks. There's just not been a lot, I think, done to protect assets, especially when you're moving towards a more cap-strict era because of the first and second apron. And you avoid the second apron. You don't sign KCP for the purposes of flexibility.
Yeah, so here's the math behind that, by the way,
Sure.
Bringing my nerddom here. The Nuggets effectively traded Reggie Jackson, JaMychal Green, 2 first-round picks, and 7 second-round picks for Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther, Deron Holmes, Hunter Tyson, and Jalen Pickett. Now, when you say it like that, and you think about all the assets that they've given up, but even more importantly than that, just the amount of flexibility that they've given up and being able to kind of pivot when they need to. That is, I think, where Nuggets fans can be very frustrated about previous decisions affecting current and future decisions, where a lot of what they've done, and I don't know if there was a lot of foresight in this being at this particular moment where the Nuggets have a specific need that they thought that they could fill, that Calvin Booth even said during media day, if there is something that we need, we will fill that hole. Like, we don't think we have enough. We may not have enough shooting. We might have to fill that. That was something that he said. And I think there was an expectation that they could, that guys like Zeke Naji and Dario Saric, if necessary, or others would be tradable. And they just haven't been. And that's the price that they are paying right now. And some of the margin moves and almost all of the margin moves that they have made, except the Russell Westbrook signing, have gone against them. And now they're in a really tough position where they've had to dig themselves out of it while other teams are able to do so.
I'm going to talk about the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope decision because we had somebody calling me out in the comments. We're going to talk about, we'll ask Swipa a tough question for a little swipe versus gripe. And we'll talk more about kind of where the Nuggets go from here, both this season and beyond. We'll talk about that coming up on Locked On Nuggets. Basketball season is heating up, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in awarded winnings, Prize Picks makes it easy and fun to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Here's how it works. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Swipa can take less. Pair that with one more correct pick and you're cashing out. This week, we're looking at the board and we're looking at what the options are. You've got the Nuggets, who are probably going to be short-handed here on back-to-back versus the Orlando Magic with a pretty good interior defense. Will Jokic just score through it? Does that mean you get a better number for going more? We'll see what happens. They've got their Taco Tuesday promo that gives you discounted player projections for even more value. Check out the promos tab and you can nail any super sweet Millie Winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. So Maya says, I just want to ask Matt, will he admit his second apron reasoning for letting KCP walk was so dumb, zero flexibility, and even his AG missing significant time scenario played out and they did nothing? Okay, so here's the deal. I was never like, this is a good move. I told you what the reasoning was. Like, I explained what the reasoning was. I'm pretty consistent that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's better than Christian Brown and they needed him. Christian's been better than him this year. They still need KCP. Like, they just needed to go get KCP. That's the guy that they need currently. That's it. That's the guy that precisely the three of us believe, the type of player that the three of us believe is what they need. Can I get a nod of agreement on that? Yeah.
Sure.
So, like, that's the thing, right? I made the argument because that was their discussion point, and it is like pretty reasonable. And here's the thing: if they had signed KCP, maybe they wouldn't have needed to. But what if they had another need they needed to address? They would have been able to. That's the problem with the flexibility argument. But the thing is, with flexibility, you have to actually do something with it, and they didn't. They tried to, and they failed. So there's two different things here. They need to do something. Why didn't they do anything? Okay, well, they tried. The inability to get things done is the hard part because you don't know what was on the other end of those calls. You don't know what was on the other end of those lines. And I'm not defending it because I think that's the job. Your job is to manage those things. To me, the biggest thing is that, Swipa talked about all the assets that they sent out in these deals that depleted the asset board. When I talk to people, that was the number one thing is we just need assets because they needed stuff to attach so that they could get some maneuverability. They made the actual cap allocation flexibility for them to be able to do something, but they needed assets to move the toxic stuff they have on their roster, the dead contracts off to acquire other people, because you can't trade a bad player for a good player. Like, fans will do this where they're like, I don't understand. Why didn't they just trade Zeke Naji for DeAndre Hunter? Why would Atlanta do that? So they wanted some sort of recompense for those type of things, and they didn't have any of that. And that to me is the thing, is because they believed in the young talent. Now, Swipa, I'll ask you this. We talked about a wing. We talked about a defender. We talked about a bench scorer. We talked about guys that are going to come off the bench. You believe in Peyton Watson. You hype him up anytime he has a great game. Doesn't adding somebody take away from those minutes? Doesn't adding a player that could truncate that and limit your flexibility on those types of things, limit your ability to do those things? Shouldn't Peyton Watson be the guy stepping up to make it to where the Nuggets didn't need to make this trade?
Peyton Watson been playing out of position for a year and a half. So, I mean, I've said he's a 3-2 since last.
He's not playing any 4 now. I'll just say that. Like, they're moving Mike to the 4.
Mm-hmm. And he's also been playing, I think, better this year. I think he has filled a lot of roles for this team. I think he's arguably their most important defender they've had this year. He's won them 2 games this year, including the Thunder game where they beat Chet and SGA.
And why do they need to make a trade?
Well, because I think this is where I think we're. No, I think you're asking this question well, obviously because you're good at what you do. So he is not a screen navigator guard defender to the degree into which they need. That's not his specialty. He is an excellent off-ball, weak side help defender. Also, very good step below that wing defender versus other comparable players like Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler, not necessarily LeBron James. So they're missing positional versatility at the guard spot to defend guards, i.e. Anthony Simons, Jordan Poole, could be Steph Curry, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. Those have been the issues they have struggled with.
Yeah.
So I think that's where this whole thing is coming from, is you have Peyton. He's really good. But the problem is the way the Nuggets is set up, because we love to talk about basketball here. They play at the level and they like to play drop. What do you need to do that? with Jokic on the court, who can't move his feet, who's not a good vertical defender, and who's slower on average than other centers at his position, even though he's really good with his hands. You need quick, decisive, technically sound guards who are able to screen navigate, that they know how to work through those worm penetrations by point guards, who know how to get around, or quick with their technique, pre-rotate, all that stuff. They don't have that. Christian is not that, even though Christian also has defensive upside. So there are very obvious things that have changed from last year to this year in their defense, and which has made their defense noticeably and statistically worse than it was last season. And what I'm saying is that right now, their best route to being a good defense is showing premium effort, which we've seen them do in stretches. But I think that when you have to rely on effort because there's a lack of talent on the defensive end, that's when you put yourself into a bind. And I think NBA history has also shown that to be true as well.
The other thing is that they have, and we've talked about this before, of course, they just have so many one-way players right now that you're going to have to pick and choose your spots, pick and choose your moments for when you go offense, when you go defense. There's a very real world where Peyton Watson is unplayable on the offensive end in the playoffs. There's a very real world where Julian Strawther's unplayable on the defensive end in the playoffs. There's a very real world where guys are hunting Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. over and over again, and Denver needs to take one of them off the floor so that they could play 3 positive defenders next to one of those guys in Jokic. Like, Denver has just so many holes and flaws that you want more optionality. You want more guys. You want more choices, because as we've seen for other teams, it doesn't have to be like guaranteed your top 5, your top 6 are going to be like better than the other team. You might need options. You might need your 8th guy to step up, your 9th guy to step up, your 10th guy to step up. And that guy may not be the same from series to series. You might need somebody different. And that's just where Denver is going to be up a creek at this point.
Well, I made this case last night. What if they don't? You know, I mean, that's the thing is like, here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to, I think it's fine to ascribe concern. I think it's fine to ascribe, this is not a well-built roster. Like, we all agree on that. This is not a well-built roster.
That's sad.
Like, we just don't, we knew that coming into the season.
Yeah.
Right. And the idea was that by the end of the season, like this is when I said, I was like, by the end of the year, the hope is that they'll get there. But part of that equation was internal development and a trade, and they didn't either. Right. I think Julian's better than he was at the start of the year, but I agree. You put him on the court in a stagger minutes lineup, right? Like, you put him in any game where they're going to stagger starters, and he's food, and that's a real problem. I think I'm okay. I actually kind of think Peyton could be a 16 gamer.
Maybe.
I'm not.
We just don't know.
I'm pretty optimistic about that. And I think that other teams have those kind of guys too. Most of the Thunder is honestly like, are those guys 16 gamers? And we don't know the answer to that outside of like Shea. I think Shea is a 16 gamer.
Sure.
Ihart's a 16 gamer.
But I think that's where it is, right? Obviously, that's going to be up to Malone to be able to make the determination between, I think, in that situation, Russell Westbrook and Peyton Watson. Yeah. One, he's going to have a lot of trust in because he's a veteran and he's a ball handler. Peyton, not a veteran nor a ball handler, might just be better suited defensively to handle certain matchups, late game situation, but also that presents its own issues. So, yeah, some of that is definitely going to be on the coaching. I just think that by and large that, and we'll get to this, I imagine, in the third segment, there are just things that they have not done to fortify their core. And I mean their core, meaning their heartbeat. Like, your body is designed to protect what's on the inside. Like, the reason why you run and lift weights and try to eat well is to protect the inner workings of your nervous system. And the nervous system of the Nuggets is this Serbian fellow who does all these really spectacular, nice things, but he has very clear deficiencies. And so the point is, I think that's kind of the way that I look at how do you actually construct rosters to really make sure that when you get to nitty-gritty time, you have what you need. And I think right now they have what they need in many ways offensively, but I think that's where it is like, go ahead.
And I'll just counterpoint to that. Like, Jokic was directly asked this, do you think you have enough? as a roster, and he said yes. He didn't elaborate any more than that. He might be lying. Like, that's
he's never been one to, like, he might believe it too, but he's also like not gonna like out his teammates for not doing.
I disagree.
He has been a little bit more forward this year.
No, I'm not even talking about that. You're thinking of it. It's like that's thinking of it the wrong way, because like he doesn't take it personally. But he's sometimes surprisingly honest, because he's just very much like, there's no reason to be hyper dramatic about this. Like, yeah, no, we're not good enough. That's okay. Sure. Lots of teams aren't good enough. So if he says it, I believe him. I genuinely think that. I think that's his mindset. I don't think he's lying.
And so if everybody steps up, if everybody does what they're supposed to do, if Jamal Murray's healthier than he was last year in the playoffs, if Mike learns from his missteps in the Minnesota Timberwolves series, if Aaron plays a little bit better, then there are reasons to believe that they can get through it.
People are talking about it in the comments. I just want to say, like, again, if you're like, what's Jokic supposed to say? Okay, that doesn't prove that he thinks it. And the other thing I would say is, there's a way for him. Here's what he would have said if he honestly didn't believe it. Is he'd be like, I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. That's what he would have said. Right? I genuinely am just telling you, like, he would have given an indication when he's like, yeah, we have enough.
Yeah.
Like, take him at his word for that. And I very rarely say that about players, because I think everybody lies. Steph, I think he would be lying. LeBron, lying his ass off. But not Joker. Up next, we'll kind of get into some of the stuff that Swipa wants to talk about in terms of how we got here and protecting the heart, so to speak, of the Nuggets. We'll talk about that coming up on Locked On Nuggets. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets, that's just the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. So, as part of I did want to note this as part of the machinations of this new CBA, which I hate with a violent passion. These are candidates with above 12.8 million mid-level. Malcolm Brogdon, Bruce Brown, Ben Simmons, and Bojan Bogdanovic. The Nuggets are not able to sign those players because they're above the first apron. They are not able to sign Bruce Brown. They are not able to sign Malcolm Brogdon, which would have been a great get. They are not able to add those players. Anybody else, you're looking at guys that are just simply not going to really make a difference in the playoffs. Maybe you can pick up, like, if you want to go take a flyer on Jaden Springer, but they'd have to make a roster spot, which they don't want to do because Calvin Booth believes so much in his guys.
Here's one name that I would throw out there. I think Josh Richardson ended up on the Utah Jazz. I wonder if they decide to buy him out, just get him an opportunity to go play for a contender. Would he move the needle at all for any of you guys?
I don't think that the team would move off Hunter Tyson or Jalen Pickett for that. So I don't, that'll be my only concern.
Could they move off of Vlatko as somebody who is expiring and is already injured?
You didn't get Joker any help, and you want to waive his best friend on the team?
Well, this is how they get help.
Is that enough help?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
I'm asking you.
I think that's...
You are that thirsty for an addition that you want to waive Vlatko for Josh Richardson.
Matt, like, look, I'm trying to come up with options here for Denver.
I
don't really have an opinion. I'm just coming up with something. Like, that's
all right. Let's go back to Captain Matt over here, and you wanted to talk about protecting the heartbeat. You are exuding. You are exuding.
It's the posture.
He's like, I'm not mad. Don't put in the paper that I was mad.
No, it's not. I'm actually sitting up. It's the camera, the way that the thing is set up. If I go like this, and it's going to veer off, so I have to uncenter it. And so I'm sitting full up. It's just the camera is lower. But
you're short.
In large part, I think that I think we're all in agreement that we think the team is poorly constructed. I do think that in order to, I'm just different from a lot of people, which I've accepted. I don't believe in wasting all-time great years. That's just not my thing. Like, I truly never been my maybe when I was a child. It might have been watching Jordan in the 90s when I was a baby and being like, you know what, that's what it should be. It might be watching Kobe and Shaq, and then we saw those wasted years from Kobe, and then they get Paul Gasol, then they're winning again. Now he gets 5. It could have been watching the Tim Duncan era, and they just like for 14 straight years were just dominant. So it could have been all of those things, but the Nuggets they're in a position now where their best player is turning 30 in approximately like 2 weeks. And you might never have this player again. And more statistically in Denver, more than likely not. And then let alone staying on your team till 30 for obvious reasons that we saw as of last weekend. So I am just in the mindset that everything at all times should just be, how do we make sure we win a ring this year? But again, that's me. I think that's more of a big market approach. I think that is how, your Lakers and others have a kind of approach the situation. How do you fortify and maximize? But even if you don't do it every year, like we all would think that the Lakers are run poorly, but they also got Anthony Davis next to LeBron, and they sold it in the 21-22 year when they traded for Russ in that $47 million contract. I think that's where they kind of threw the vision off. But I think when you have players like that, I think there's just a manner in which you kind of have to move. And I think there are, post that 21-22 year, y'all, I just thought that they really could have really leaned into the athletes and defenders thing, which they did. But I think when they got cheap around those margins with that last set, Bruce, you couldn't do anything about. But the KCP move, indecision to keep Zeke instead of that, I think it's things like that I think that everybody's kind of evaluating, and we're saying that like we all agree. I think Jokic had a slightly positive defensive year in certain situations, but I think he's also been a negative in many stretches this year too, more so than recent years. Why is that? Is that because he's getting older? Is that because the offensive burden he has to carry has been heavier than the last couple of years, but prior to the last, let's say, 7 weeks or so? Like, is it because the situation around him has changed so drastically that he has to commit more effort there and he can't do that? Like, there's a lot of things that lead into that. And so it's just a matter of, but again, if Porter's playing like this, is it really that big of a deal? Like, if Jamal Murray able to go 7 and 10 because he doesn't have to shoot the ball, then no. Like, then do what they want.
I do think that given the lack of flexibility that they had this year, Murray's unable to be traded, Gordon's unable to be traded. They don't have access to a lot of picks. That's not really changing like a ton next year, but some guys become available. You go through these playoffs, you see who shows up, you see who doesn't show up. There's a lot of pressure on it. If they don't win the championship and if they don't really make progress, then you have to look. You have to look at this core and what it actually brings to the table, and you have to probably make some tough decisions. The other factor is that I believe Nikola Jokic is extension eligible this offseason. And if you approach him with an extension and he starts to think about it as opposed to just like immediately signing it, then you probably have to be pretty aggressive when it comes to doing what you need to keep him around.
Sure, and you'd like them to be super aggressive in doing it, but you can also be so aggressive that you wind up disrupting and putting yourself in worse positions. The Phoenix Suns put Bradley Beal next to Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, and it's a flaming disaster.
Of course. But here's the thing. Nobody in their right mind would trade for Bradley Beal, and they did it anyway because they're dumb, because they decided, you know what's better than Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton, Bradley Beal, and they were wrong. So I think that there's ways to go about that correctly, and Denver's going to have to be smart about it.
Make big aggressive moves, but also make sure that you're right, because if
not...
Matt,
just hold on, y'all. I think there's a line to be walked here. There is a big aggressive, but there's also... No one, I think, of basketball ingenuity said the Bradley Beal trade was going to be worth this assault. Yeah. I mean, I could have told you that. I don't think Matt even agreed with that, and I think Ryan agreed. But I think there's lines. I think you can be aggressive. For me, you know what aggressive was? PJ Washington to Neil Gafford. And that was a risk in some ways, but you can see the concept. But again, I think you do stuff like that and you try and then you keep it moving if it doesn't work. The Russell Westbrook trade, while I get it conceptually, can we give LeBron a better ball handler? Sure.
Hang on.
But it wasn't a good fit from the get-go.
You can't just be like, we're just going to keep flipping out. Blah, 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 blah. That's not how you that's not a good approach either. Right. So like,
I don't know if I suggested that either.
Well, that's what it sounded like.
They've also had the same core together for 4 years. Now they've been injured in a couple of them, but
sure. And that's totally fine. Again, like I asked you last night after the stretch of play, do you want to trade Michael Porter Jr.? Like the answer here was not to extend Jamal, and then you see what you could get. But here's the thing: is given how Jamal's played, you're probably not getting anything you want anyway. Like the Nuggets had 3 players they were either unable or were not going to trade: Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon. Right? That's how much money is that off the top of your head, Ryan?
This year, that is about 110 million.
It's 110 million. 36. They committed so fully to the idea of the draft is what's going to get us there. These guys are going to be what's going to get us there. Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, they're all going to be just like Christian Brown, and they weren't. Like those guys aren't as good as Christian. They're just not.
But again, if I remember correctly, what I said, I think yes, building a roster around 6 rookie contracts is more than likely not the best way to do that. As of last offseason,
totally
when I said that.
Yeah. And
so
I think
even prototypically, you would need veterans in those roles, which I said, like Nikhil or Dunn, cheaper, young-ish 25, 26-year-olds you want in this role. So you're asking, you're having to have a conversation with me and how I process what this team needed in response to how Booth initiated the roster with a very young roster with 5 to 6 rookie contract, which again is not prototypical for the rest of the league and how you build a contender.
Yeah, I agree.
In history,
he tried really hard to be like, this is what the new CBA is going to do. So this is the path. And he went so far, like Calvin Booth went so far down it that he didn't leave himself any options. That to me was always the key here, where it's like, I don't mind you being like, yeah, no, I like Jalen Pickett and Hunter Tyson. I think they can be guys. But you needed to give yourself the option of, whoops, got it wrong. That happens. Let's waive them and get some actual NBA players in here. Right? Like you needed that optionality. But
my positioning is not about being right on this show among you all. My positioning is what has the team needed in order to be the best version of itself. And I have argued what they need are certain things like Nall, like Bruce, like Dunn, because those are actually fitting the demographic that fits how Joker struggles, how Jamal struggles, how Porter might struggle. But again, that's just because I'm watching this team and I'm watching and I'm disagreeing with Calvin Booth's assertion that young players are going to fix this. So that's what I'm saying. Like I'm measuring what this team needs based on how the rest of the league tends to cooperate at the highest level in an NBA final setting. That's what we're talking about.
I think here is a question. Should they pivot completely this summer? That I think is a more interesting question going forward. Is should they, like the Warriors had to, like they didn't. It's like, did they abandon 2 timelines? No. Right? They still got Kuminga, they still got Moody, they still got Pods. They didn't trade those guys. Right? Should the Nuggets wipe the slate on all the young talent except for Peyton Watson? Maybe, depending on what you can get him. Should they wipe the slate on Project Dynasty this summer?
No. I don't.
Can you answer that before we have a playoff run?
And that's the key. That's of course the key. You need to see how these guys actually play in a playoff series. You need to see what Christian Brown does in a situation where they need him, not where he is like an addition to the rotation. You need to see what Peyton Watson looks like when they count on him, what Julian Strawther looks like when they count on him. And I think we'll learn a lot about how they handle that and what they are able to do.
We're going to wrap up this version of the show. If you're listening to this on podcast, you can catch the full extended conversation. Don't go anywhere if you're in the comments. We're not going anywhere. We are going to put a truncated version of this up for Locked On at this marker, and then we'll come back. And if you want to hear the rest of it, check out the live show at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets for more.